Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bunbun, and this is our reaction and review for Grotesquerie, Season 1, Episodes 3 and Episode 4.
Mhm.
This is the big dramatic debut of Travis Kelce as a character we now know as Ed Lachlan,
Mhm.
aka Fast Eddie. We have an intro to him. We have a lot of crazy stuff going on. We have a
Mhm.
big, I guess we could say, fiery cliffhanger at the end of all of
Mhm.
this as
Mhm.
well.
How are you feeling about seeing Travis and what he's been doing so far?
So, okay, I'll give a little bit. I'll do the quick version of my historical backstory here on Travis because I saw him on SNL a good while ago, and this was before all the Taylor Swift headlines and all of that. I think there's kind of a misnomer of, oh, you just want to be in Hollywood now because you're with it. No, that's not true. Travis has been wanting to go in this direction for a very, very long time. He was great on SNL. I
Mhm.
think he was pretty good in Grotesquerie as well. Like I could sense maybe he was like a little bit nervous. I think the directing could have made him go even bigger on some scenes, but for an athlete coming into a dramatic role, and athletes are kind of told to be very reserved a lot of the time,
Mhm.
I thought he did a really nice job.
I've not seen him in anything else. I don't watch football. I only have ever heard of his name because he
Mhm.
is dating Taylor Swift. So I just went into this with just an open mind because I've never seen him do anything before. I really enjoyed him. If I'm, being
Mhm.
completely just out there with it, I thought that he was charming in all the right ways. We had him flirting with Lois a little
Mhm.
bit. I think a lot of us feel like he's probably the killer. I
Yeah.
mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's all kind of being tied together. I think he did a really good job.
I think the biggest compliment that I can give him after these two episodes is after maybe about 5 minutes, because it took me about 5 minutes for me to be like, oh, here, look, it's Travis Kelce. He's on Grotesquerie. I didn't really see him as that for the rest of the time. It was more,
Yeah.
okay, here's Fast Eddie. What's Fast Eddie up to? What is his relationships with some of the other characters? And he's a unique character in this show, too, where you can sense that he has a little bit of a comic sensibility, but there might be something that's kind of sinister to him behind the scenes. Like you mentioned, he's probably the killer. I feel the same way. He probably
Yeah.
is the killer in some way, but I can understand why someone like Lois would be drawn to him so quickly because it's easy to be sort of like, oh, you're a cop. Why are you getting so close to this dude who you don't know, who just magically shows up out of the blue, to the point where I thought he was a hallucination
Yeah,
at first?
I had wondered that at first as well. He's not,
Yeah.
but I completely understand. I know that there's probably some out there that might be like, and he's already at her house,
Yeah.
and what is going on? But it makes complete sense. She's in such a dark case. She's feeling very lost about Marshall, what's going on with her daughter, with herself. That in comes this light, this gentleman. He's charming. He's tall and handsome. He's funny. He's paying her attention. He's opening the door for her. It's easy to get swept up in that
Yeah.
when you are at a low point. So it's absolutely believable to me that she would take in this little bit of kindness. When you're just shrouded in darkness and a little bit of light comes through, you're going to take it.
Well, we'll get more into Travis. We'll get more into all of the other interesting menagerie of grotesquerie. That's a lot of words at once. But before we do, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other coverage, especially since over the next several days there are a lot of exciting shows that are starting to
Mm-hmm.
pop up here, in addition to From on MGM Plus, which we're already covering and we love very much. In the upcoming days, there are two new shows that should send a tingle down your spine, whether it is Teacup, a new horror
Mm-hmm.
drama on Peacock, or Sweet Pea, which is premiering on Stars. It kind of has some Dexter vibes, and it stars Ella Purnell, who you may know from Yellow Jackets or from Fallout.
We're also going to be covering American Horror Stories. They're
Mm-hmm.
dropping 5 episodes for this Huluween special, which we will also be covering here. So hit that subscribe button. Also, if you
Mm-hmm.
want to check out our coverage of The Penguin,
Yeah.
that is going on over exclusively on our Patreon. We'll leave a link for you below if you want to join that and check out our Penguin coverage. Thank you so much to everyone who has.
Thank you guys so much.
Okay, so
Yes.
Ed Lachlan,
Yeah.
the killer?
I think he is. And I think the biggest evidence that I have, and there's a couple of things that we'll still have to talk through here as to the mechanics of all this and can it work for Ed, but
Mhm.
he just seems to be at the right place at the right time. And that's always sort of a big, massive red flag. That's just whenever a character needs something, oh, here is Ed willing to help. Here is Ed willing to help at the hospital. We don't know much about his past other than what he has told us. He
Mhm.
said that he has spent time in Alaska. He had a pretty unique name in his line of work in Alaska. I think that maybe he's telling the truth, but at the same time, he probably knows if he is the killer that Lois has so much on her plate already. Is she really going to be taking the time to research Fast Eddie's backstory here? I just don't think so.
There's so many connections to him being the killer. I mean, we saw him have this religious medallion on. We know that these killings also have a religious aspect to them. We saw this most recent killing, and there was a lot of people that were all sort of Frankenstein together, that were all people that Lois and the police department know, that have seen or dealt with in the past. And then we get this background about Ed where he has, struggled with alcohol and some things that he's done in his past that very much mirror a lot of the people that are getting killed. And it's
Mhm.
almost like he's trying to sort of send this message, if it's him or the killer, that's like, you don't see us. You don't see us. Like, you're supposed to be there to help us as the police, but you're not actually helping. You're seeing us and kind of moving along and just leaving us there for dead. And now he's has this message for them to just kind of be like, you guys are hypocrites. And it feels a lot like that's also the message that he's giving when it comes to the church and religion. Like, we're going to get into everything with Megan and Charlie and
Yeah.
everything that's happening there. But it feels like, unless that's just there for shock value, which I like to believe that it's not, and that
Mhm.
it is a message of hypocrisy, and that this killer is also feeling that sort of these staples of people who are supposed to be good and protecting you, like the church, like police, like whoever, are all dropping the ball on the people that really matter, and that's what these tableaus are about.
I think there's a lot going on here when it comes to connections to hypocrisy, things that are being pointed out. Clearly the priest here is not exactly practicing what he preaches. The other thing that I will say about Ed in general, and this is why it works to cast somebody like Travis, who
Mhm.
is a big, pretty physical guy, is
Yeah.
that if you are the killer here, you have to have a certain amount of strength to do what he has done when it comes to positioning these bodies, creating these tableaus. You have to know what you're doing so that you can get in, get out, do it, leave without being too detected. And I think it's a much harder sell if the person responsible for all of this is somebody who is smaller and is going to be less efficient with being able to carry all that out.
Yeah, and they have started to zero in that this might be somebody that's in the medical field because of knowing anatomy, being able to suture, being able to make these cuts and be able to sort of assemble people. You kind of have to know anatomy and what's going on. And then it also makes sense because Ed would have sort of this alibi to be like, "Hey,
Mhm.
I'm the good guy orderly. I'm here helping you out,
Yeah.
I help people, like, I'm in the medical field. I'm one of the good guys," kinda thing.
Yeah, and that to me is the biggest sort of question, and this is the only thing in my head that's sort of raising doubt, but you can sort of find a way to explain this away as well, which is that Ed has seemingly given himself an alibi with Lois's daughter in episode 4, that he's there looking after her. She's off with Megan on this road trip far away where there's this massive fire that's happening. We don't know when all of that necessarily started. That's
Yeah.
sort of the big thing there.
Yeah, there was these coordinates that her daughter was able to get out of the box that brought
Yeah.
them to this fire. Now let's talk about the next possible suspect that this
Yeah.
could be, and that's Dr. Joe Ritter. Dr. Joe
Yeah.
Ritter. So if we're still in this arena of it's somebody in the medical field, maybe it is this person that might have knowledge of anatomy. It's not exactly clear. if all of his background, we just know that he is a doctor out there. So is it possible that maybe it's him? I mean, yes. And the biggest thing that gave me pause on it, where it's like, oh, is maybe Ed not the killer? Is that we had this woman at the very end that got into the car with
Mhm.
Megan, with Lois, that's like, he's out here, he's after me, and he's still here. And it's like, okay, well, if he's still here, we know where Ed is right
Yeah.
now. Ed is not out there, but Joe is.
Yeah, I think it's all if it's his Ed who's responsible for it, you're gonna have to sort of do some mental gymnastics and sort of say that maybe she's speaking metaphorically,
Yeah.
maybe Ed is not working alone or going, X, Y, or Z with a lot of this.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
Mr. Doctor here, out here in the middle of nowhere, I do not like the cut of your jib. I think you come straight
Oh.
out of this guy comes straight out of Bad Guy Monthly. Like he looks like somebody who crawled right out of the end of True Detective season 1 with like the look on his face, his outfit, his voice. Like I'm very surprised he didn't go full long time like in that episode. He looks very sinister.
Yeah, he also brought up this notion that nobody knows about this sinkhole that's
Yeah,
on fire except him and
yeah,
a car and a pickup truck that he has seen out there. And it's
yeah.
like, okay, well, if nobody knows about it, well, you do. So, could it just then be you?
I think the question I'm wrestling with the most coming out of these two episodes, which I do think are very entertaining, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of left to sort of wonder, does Ryan and his collaborators on Grotesquerie, do they really care so much about who is responsible, or are they more interested in the why and the how? Like, I don't know if
Mhm.
we should be viewing this show as an only murders in the building, or if that's something that is intended here. But granted, since we love whodunits, we're going to do that regardless. I'm just kind of curious as to what is the actual purpose and intention behind what's being delivered here.
Yeah, that's the thing is I think a lot of us felt like Travis was probably going to be the killer even
Yeah.
before the season started. He was in the trailer for a second
Hmm.
and you have this huge casting like Travis and he's going to be in the trailer for a second. He
Yeah.
is not in the opening credits of this show at all. And then if you go to IMDb, and I know that it's unreliable, but bear with me here,
Yeah.
he is the only person that's listed that doesn't have a character name, or at least didn't
Yeah.
for the first couple of episodes, which is really suspect. Where
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, so we probably are all like, all right, he's going to be the killer. But for me, it is more of why? Why is he doing this? And I think this episode gave away a lot more of that. That there is ties to people in power and how they have the ability to be able to help people, and they're just not paying attention. They're just not doing it, and they're hypocrites.
Yeah, I'm kind of viewing the church at this point. Like, I'm sure you can read this show as a big examination of the church and wrongdoing in the church, but you could also say that the church is just a stand in for any sort of institution that has really powerful people who
Hmm.
are coming in and sort of saying, okay, we're the good guys. We're going to be here to teach you what is right from wrong. And then
Yeah.
you see what's going behind closed doors here. And this brings us to Father Charlie, who now has a new nickname of Father Peloton. And Father Peloton here, I'm not going to chastise him for the Pelotoning of it all, but I will continue the question, what is going on with this church that you're hiring this dude who looks like he's 22, that he's going to magically be, a leader of all these men and women? Like, I still have a hard time buying into that. I have a hard time buying into sort of the collective amount of this guy's extracurricular activities.
Yeah, watching him in that scene where he was just walking around the church in this sheer robe,
Yeah.
chaps, all that going on. He's in the actual church where
Yes.
everybody works. Anybody can come in at any time. I'm just like, this just doesn't feel believable because this feels like Yes, he's young. Yes, he's sort of got a lot of bravado and stuff like that, but he is fully aware that that is something that he would need to keep behind closed doors. He can't be walking through the church like that. Anybody could come in at any time, cleaning, doing whatever in the church, that he wouldn't take a risk like that. He is so young and he could easily be bounced from this position if somebody just happened to walk in at the wrong time, looking for confession,
Yeah.
looking, to clean up, whatever it is. People are in and out of churches all the time.
I guess is it possible that this show is sort of saying that, oh, the church is turning a blind eye to things that are so blatantly obvious? Maybe, but at the same
Maybe.
time, I kind of feel like it's over the top if that is the case, because this is so blatantly obvious. And it just feels like if I was somebody who attended this church and I saw something that was going on for a second, I would not be like, gee, this is fine. I'm going to continue going here and not say anything.
Yeah, it would be absolutely everywhere if somebody had seen something like this. And they did have a little bit of discussion with some of the older clergy that was just like, hey, some of the things that, you're trying to do here, we understand that it's bringing in money,
Yeah.
like with the website and with the online spinning classes and all that type of stuff to make things fresh and more progressive for us, and that's all fine and everything, but
Yeah.
like there still needs to be some sort of tradition with this church. It can't just be, chaps and Peloton.
No, I at least find Megan to be a little bit more believable, just in the sense that I think she does have a level of care for the church and for the institution. She does feel I mean, a very high amount of guilt over what she does with Father Peloton near the end of episode 4, unless this is some sort of big elaborate act. And with a show like this, you never quite know. I've already
Hmm.
seen their theories that Megan is really the one behind all of this at the end of it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think so. But
yeah,
I will say this for anybody who does have that theory, it is very suspect
yeah,
that she, for the first couple episodes, was showing up to crime scenes that she wouldn't have known are happening.
yeah.
So is it possible that maybe she's having some sort of connection to whoever the killer is, and that's how she's able to show up and know some details? It's possible. Anything is possible.
I am now going to point out something on this show, and this is something I don't really ever feel watching TV, which is something happens on the show and I'm all the way out on it. And then as it goes on and the producers are dragging it along, I somehow find my way getting back in. And I'm talking about the musical aspect of this, where they're in the car and Sister Megan's just singing, and I'm just like, okay, come on. I know you cast the stage actors for this, Ryan, and you just want to have her sing. I am not interested in it. But then the more it goes, and then Niecy starts singing too, and I somehow am like, okay, I'm in on it now, and then it ends.
I am never in on people singing in the car, but I'm all in on Niecy in general. I mean, that scene where
Yeah,
she walked into that whole, scene that where we've got, the pieces of somebody all put together with
yeah.
the goat head and everything that was going on. That speech that she gave, oh my God, 10 out of 10. She's so incredible on this show.
I kind of feel like if Grotesquerie didn't have Niecy, I'm not sure that the show would work, because
100%. I agree.
it's playing with a lot of really, really big ideas. And we know that shows of this nature can be really unwieldy. And that's
Yep.
kind of what's happening. There are some things about this show that are really, really over the top. And you have people who are going for it. And then you have people who are playing things a little bit more understated. But because Niecy, I think as an actress, is really good at sort of fluctuating between, she can play things really big, but she can
Yep.
also play things a lot more subtle and emotional. She's a really good kind of connective tissue with all of this. But at the same time, we're left with all these questions around her, because we've kind of already have seen that she's capable or able to see things that nobody else really can,
Mhm.
sometimes related to a case, sometimes not, that I'm constantly left watching her feeling like, okay, what's actually happening?
Yeah, there's been theories going around that Lois's daughter is not actually
Yeah.
alive, that her husband isn't actually alive. And I was feeling that maybe for the first couple episodes, especially her husband. I was like, maybe he's just not actually around, because Nurse Red doesn't make any sense to this show. She doesn't fit in at all.
Mhm.
Anything about her, nothing fits in. So, but this episode, we did have some of the other police after Lois had left the room being like, guys, we need to give her a break. Her husband's in a coma. I'm like, oh, okay. So if they're talking about that when she's not
Yeah.
around, that tells me as the viewer that this is actually happening, that her daughter's around and so is her husband, that they're not actually dead. Let's, though, talk about Nurse Red.
Oh,
This
must
is the
we?
board. Yeah. Okay. Here's my back with my beef
Okay,
hat
I'm putting
on.
mine
Like,
on too.
I I can't stand this character if she's real, and
Yeah.
she just takes me out of this show in such a dramatic way that it makes it then hard for me to get back into the show. The only way that I've been able to like keep it trucking with her is that I think she's not real. Like, her hair and her clothes from the 40s with the victory rolls and all that, and the way that she's been talking to Lois and doing things to Lois's husband. Lois is not arresting her. Like, it is so out there that I just can't believe that she's real. She has to be a manifestation of Lois's guilt over things that she has said to Marshall, things that she has done to her family, things that she is doing to herself. Like, it has to be that. If Nurse Red is actually real, it's just going to be such a disappointment.
I have to agree with you. I have to live in a world where she is a manifestation of insecurity, of trauma, or like any of these other things that Lois has gone through. Maybe she
Yeah.
watched a lot of TV with characters who looked like that growing
Yep.
up. And usually, things you watch on TV in your life 5 or 10 years, like that's sort of the formative stuff that you take with you for the rest of your life. And that would sort of explain the somewhat dated appearance that she has. But she does, if she's real, she does radically take me out of the show, because the whole like power of attorney stuff, like that to me,
Stop.
it
It's so ridiculous.
it really just feels like, okay, maybe Lois is worried about that because, of her
Mhm.
husband's history and everything that they've gone through, and maybe this is where she's conjuring it up. But just in the world of reality, it's just so ridiculous that, like, oh, here's a nurse who's all of a sudden going to be like, I'm going to be the one to take care of him and decide all of these needs. It's just so baffling. And I wish the character wasn't there. I'm guessing the character's there because they felt the need that Lois needed someone to talk to at the hospital all the time, and we didn't have Ed right away. But if you were going to do that, did you have to make this character this ridiculous?
Well, the thing that Nurse Red does bring out, which is all of Lois's guilt and
Mhm.
all the things that she's feeling about herself, about her daughter, about Marshall, about all of it. But I don't need that character to know that Lois is feeling these things. I've seen it in the scenes where,
Yeah.
in the past, where she was talking to Marshall and talking about, the drinking and the cheating and what's going on with her daughter. I've gotten some of that from her daughter and those conversations as well. I don't need
Yeah.
this nurse at all. Like, even Lois there, when she's laying beside Marshall and talking to him, like, all that information is already there.
Yeah.
This nurse just on repeat, sort of drilling it into her, is nothing. It's not adding anything to this
That's
except frustration.
It's why I hope in the episodes to come we do continue to see plenty of big surprising things that make our jaw drop, but at the same time a little bit of restraint, because I think despite how honestly grotesque things we get are on
Mhm.
Grotesquerie, there needs to be a grounded reality. What's really going to win us over are the emotional scenes with Lois and her family,
Yeah.
understanding why the big bad is doing all this sort of stuff. And that's where I'm hoping that the producers can rein certain parts of this in, because we all know that American Horror Story seasons in particular, they kind of suffer from overindulgence once you get to episode 6 or episode 7, where it's like, here's 5 new characters who don't matter. Here's this big dance sequence that doesn't matter. It's just,
Here's Father Charlie in a see-through robe and chaps dancing through the church. Like, none of this makes any sense.
no, like if you've got a specific message and you're trying to deliver it, that's great, but don't repeat things over and over again. Just focus in. This is a show that has a lot of potential. Do I
Yeah.
worry that it is going to stick the landing 1,000,000%, because not every show from Ryan does stick the landing.
Most of them don't know.
But I'm really happy with where this is going. I'm really
Yeah.
pleased that Travis is not some distraction, that he works really
No.
well within the fabric of it. So,
Yeah, he's great.
tip of the cap to him, and another tip of the cap to all of you for watching this video. But be sure to subscribe. Like we said earlier, we have so much coming up
Yeah.
in between, from American Horror Stories, and then also these new shows in Teacup and Sweet Pea.
Mhm.
And if you want to support us further, join our Patreon. That link is in the description below. We're covering the Penguin exclusively over there. Thank you so much. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
here next time.